Hello and welcome once more to what would be episode 7 or chapter 7. I've used chapter and episode of the Maverick book, The Making of Maverick Theatre, How to Make a Crisis Out of a Drama. I'm Nick Hennigan, and thank you so much for your kind comments. As I mentioned in episode 1, the reason for doing this was partly as a result of a chat with television producer John Lloyd, who did QI and Blackadder and stuff, on an Idler magazine conversation about putting ourselves at the centre of the story. I don't want to put myself at the centre of the story, but it occurred to me that what's happening in the world in 2020 is pretty remarkable. And what happened in 1997 in May, in the same month, was less dramatic, although in some senses more dramatic. Anyway, I digress. So let's continue. And again, thank you very much for your very positive comments. I have to say as well, it's lovely to hear from some of the former Maverick people as well, actors and directors who've been in touch as a result of this. It's great. You were great. You know you were great. Huh? You were brilliant. So thank you very much. And again, social media. You can follow thingy, because this is going on to YouTube. The second biggest search engine in the world, apparently. Yes, I didn't know that either. So you can like this, and also you can subscribe. And if you press the little bell, apparently someone was telling me, it means that if we do another one of these, then you'll be informed. Oh, can you wait? I'm going to do them every other day. I was going to do it every day, but I didn't want to overload you. And also, the way these were written, as I've mentioned right on the very first episode, this is a kind of a stream of consciousness diary, the making of Maverick Theatre, but it goes all over the place. And is about a theatre company, but is also about how we came to be, and I suppose really how I'm feeling about the art, love. So you can get informed. So I'm going to do them every other day, I think, if that's all right with you. Yeah? All right then. Thank you. Let me know if not. So we're going to carry on with the Maverick book, How to Make a Crisis Out of a Drama. Friday, the 23rd of May, 1997. Hooray! I signed Paul Henry this afternoon to play the part of Bob in A Ghost of a Chance. He's best known for playing the part of Benny in Crossroads, and I really wanted an all-Birmingham team for the show. I also think he'll be a sufficient draw to fill the pub, particularly as I've reduced the run to just 5 nights at the Billesley to work around their discos and functions. I haven't told the press yet. I've got to think carefully about how we play this, because it could be a national story if I'm clever. I go for a drink with a lifelong friend who actually should be a writer too, Pete Sword. Apart from having a fantastic surname, he's also a good bloke. I discuss a scene I'm thinking of adding to Ghost of a Chance. After much discussion and a few pints, I decide it's too big and perhaps horrible to warrant an inclusion in Ghost of a Chance, but it has given me another idea for a play if I have the guts to write it. Perhaps about 4 kids growing up on a council estate in Birmingham. We shall see. Pete Sword is the sort of friend everyone should have. I've known him since I was about 8 or 9 years old. He was, and still is, a friend of my elder brother, Bob. I have to say, my early relationship with Pete Sword was somewhat strained. You see, the Hennigan household in those days was always a happy, bustling place. We used to have some great parties when relatives, friends and neighbours from our council estate on Hollyback Road and all around in Billesley would all muck in. I get the impression that if Mom had had a little more money, she would have been a great thrower of dinner parties. We didn't have dinner parties, but Mom always put on a great spread, and our little house on Hollyback Road used to be packed to the seams with happy, laughing people. As Bob, my older brother, was heavily involved with the Sea Scouts, there were always large amounts of younger people around, generating bags of good-natured energy. Inevitably, a guitar would appear from somewhere, and everyone would join in. This profusion of young people based around Bob, who then seemed really old to me, he would have been about 19, used to spill over to non-party nights, school nights. Mum and Dad would regularly come downstairs in the week and have to step over the besleeping bagged bodies of Bob's friends. And one of these friends was Pete Sword. The reason for our early tension was loosely involved with sleeping bags, or more precisely, the sleeping bag of my Action Man. Action Man was, at the time, my favourite toy. I'd read about G.I. Joe, the American equivalent, in my friend's DC Action comics. And when Palitoy eventually brought out a UK version, I actually preferred the name G.I. Joe. I thought Action Man was a bit twee. Anyway, I nagged Mom and I got one for Christmas. And at night, like any considerate little boy, I used to undress Action Man and put him in his sleeping bag before I went to bed. Well, you would, wouldn't you? Unfortunately for my Action Man, however, Pete Sword, who at this time was about 19 or 20, discovered the 70s equivalent of the worry beads. Redressing sleeping Action Man after young Nick had been sent to bed, I'd come downstairs in the morning and, horror of horrors, AM would be fully dressed in his battle kit or spacesuit or something. No sleep for Action Man. I became quite disturbed by it. I mean, everyone needs sleep, don't they? I mean, especially if you have battles to fight and worlds to save and space places to go. After the fourth or fifth time it happened, I decided things had gone far enough. I'd have to have a word with this Pete bloke. Although I couldn't see any outward signs of fatigue in Action Man, he didn't seem to have be particularly irritable, and there was little evidence of bags under the eyes. But I'd have to make sure he got his sleep. I was also aware that talking to an adult about a matter like this could be potentially very embarrassing. It would have to be done with a certain finesse. I picked my moments carefully. Bob and a few cronies had come back to our house for a coffee on a Tuesday night, and, as usual, I was sent on my way to bed. Action Man was, as usual, tucked up in his sleeping bag. As I headed for the stairs, I casually threw a glance at Pete. And make sure you put Action Man back to sleep, eh? I don't mind you playing with him, but he's got to finish his night, like all good boys, in his bed. I smiled. Pete Sword laughed. I went to bed proud of the fact I'd communicated equally with a grown-up. The next morning I came down for school. Action Man was standing to attention and saluting in full combat gear in the back of his Action Man Jeep. I never won the Action Man Ward with Pete Sword. The Action Man War with Pete Sword. Despite trying other ruses like hiding Action Man behind the settee or in the pantry or anywhere I thought Pete wouldn't find him. But there was obviously some sort of fifth columnist in our family because Pete Sword always managed to find him. However, Pete was to have a much bigger effect on my younger life than just robbing Action Man of sleep. Pete was one of those rare breeds of adults who talk to kids as an equal. He was prepared to listen, and I found this a great novelty at the time. He also accepted kids for what they were, young people learning the ropes of life and finding their level and way in the world. He was tolerant, understanding and funny, and I worshipped him throughout my early teens. I could talk to Pete about anything. I trusted him completely. I had a fairly traumatic and troublesome experience when I was just 14, and it was Pete, with patience, tolerance and understanding, who sorted things out. He was generous to a fault and philosophical about it. He would buy me, or my younger sister Fiona, things, and when we protested that we couldn't accept his generosity, he'd say, "I'm working and you're at school. Soon there'll be a time when you are working and you'll know other people who are at school. That's when you pay back. You do for them what I'm doing for you. Pass it on." If half the world's leaders adopted Pete Sword's philosophy, wouldn't we live in a nice place? Pete also took me for my very first Indian meal at the Taj Mahal restaurant in Birmingham city centre. He got special permission from Mom, and we ate out at 11:30 p.m. I was 13 and it was a very big occasion indeed. Pete was philosophical about the menu. I was there with my sister as well. Try what you want, you two. If you don't like it, leave it and try something else. We could hardly believe our ears. An adult saying it was okay to leave food. I still see Pete Sword quite often. I've invited him to the opening night of A Ghost of a Chance. Obviously our relationship is, different now because I've grown up-ish. Yes, some may disagree with that. But I still find him easy to talk to on any subject. Every kid should have a Pete Sword as a friend.